We want to be moved. We want to be healed, changed, inspired, consoled, and all that through words, words, words. So is an address more like classical rhetoric, the purpose of which, according to Aristotle, was really persuasion, to change you, to manipulate feelings or to direct reason in a certain direction. Well, why not? When we get a lot of rhetoric in daily life, there is persuasion everywhere, trying to get us to buy thus or such, to behave in this way or that way, or to accept one or another points of view, trying to turn us around. So rhetoric, too, has at its heart power of the speaker over you. To persuade, to convince, is in fact a type of coercion, not through force, but through the skilled use of words, words, words to affect the heart or change the mind, and thus bring those in line to the speaker's point of view. Nevertheless, would we not feel somehow cheated if we did not leave today's worship feeling shifted, changed, moved somehow from a point A, that is, the spirit we enter with, to a point B, the better spirit we leave with? Worship, to be worth our while, has to accomplish something in the way of movement of our spirits. And it seems this can only be accomplished if a congregation is taken on something of a journey. And someone has to draw the map. But suppose, just suppose, no one draws the map. No one gives direction. Are addresses such as this one a necessary medium in worship? Well, have you ever been to a Quaker meeting? Yes, no? I have, and anyone, the way it works is that anybody in the congregation can speak when and as the Spirit moves them. And so what occurs is something like, well, not a dialogue, but a multi-log. And while I really do honor this egalitarian ethos, there seem, for me, in Quaker meetings to be no kind of organizing principle to make thoughts and feelings cohere. And one is left feeling rather jumbled. Quaker sharing can go broad, but for me, for all its egalitarian purity, it never went deep. And the words just seem to flow in all directions like water. By the way, if you've been involved in any sort of Quaker services for a while, you'll quickly know that the democratic egalitarian ethos is a myth. Some words, that is, those of the elders of the congregation, carry more weight, and like Orwell, some opinions are more equal than others. At Shady Grove services, you may be interested to know, we've instituted the practice of having a discussion follow the address. Open, but refereed to keep it more or less within the arbitrary boundary set by the service, and so somewhat coherent. Many Unitarian Universalist services do this, by the way. I learned it from going to preach in Perth. It encourages, this discussion, individual witnessing, individual testifying, and introduces a degree of democratic interactivity. It's spontaneous, yes, but that spontaneous is moved by what came up for the individual during the service. So it's not Quakerishly wide open. It's, by the way, easier to manage such a discussion when there's only about 15 of us. I don't know if I do it here. We'd agree, then, that good addresses do move, are necessary for movement to a better state, and so a Unitarian address and discussion may approach something like group therapy, where people go to have their feelings managed or assuaged, to ease the pain of living, to inspire a spiritual direction. But a Unitarian minister or preacher isn't a guru, and our faith has always been rightly wary of charlatanism, of the power to delude and manipulate by the power of words and the force of personality. Catharsis or inspiration may happen as a byproduct of a good address, but it would be dangerous to have this as the preacher's intention, don't you think? Think of the power that practice would confer. Nevertheless, we know when we have been touched by words and consoled and healed. I, for one, just feel better every time I hear an address, even if I wasn't expecting to. Maybe there's something to just sitting as we are, attentive, trusting, being led, and going with it. When I was first trying my hand at writing these 10 years ago, Mark Alstrom told me that no matter how clever I think I'm being, never to forget that there is someone sitting in the congregation whose heart has been broken. Someone who needs to be touched, consoled, healed. But again, I worry about this. I'm not Christ. I have no power to heal, and it would be vain to assume that merely being bequeathed the pulpit automatically confers some magic power. At Shady Grove, I'm frequently asked to say grace before the shared meal, which is a really nice thing, but it's not like I or anyone has special powers so that the words actually do anything. Maybe, friends, maybe there's something to just being here as we are in community. So, reviewing all these things, an address is not. What is Unitarian preaching for? What is its nature and purpose? What we're doing now. Now, you may have recognized by now that addresses can and do contain all of the elements or flavors of all the foregoing. The lecture, the performance, oratory, rhetoric, group therapy. And there are many other species not mentioned, like the Unitarian book report. Here, I've read this great book, let me chew and digest it for you. Or the folksy extended metaphor, how life is like a Christmas turkey. Addresses partake of all these things I've mentioned, and at the same time is none of them alone. So why bother to try to define it, Rob? Well, because, again, preaching an address is a very specialized medium, and therefore I think it's poorly understood. Though we do know one when we see one. In the traditional structure of the order of service, which, by the way, is a template that sticks more or less to the outline of the Christian Mass, the address or sermon is placed at the narrative climax of the program. All things lead to it, all elements meet in it, and after it's over, there is a sense of falling gently back down to earth. Proof that the service as we know it follows something like a narrative structure, rising to a point, a climax, and then a gradual ride downhill and back to reality. So in answer to my question, I want to suggest that what an address can be, and maybe should be, in an inclusive democratic faith such as ours, is this: an opening gambit that is a catalyst for ongoing conversation. Conversation can be sacred as a reading, a meditation, a prayer, or an address. Now, I know this might sound odd coming from a pulpit where the communication seems decidedly one way. In reality, if you think about it, an address isn't one way. Even now, as I say these words, as they seem to flow out only to you, information from you is flowing back to me. It speaks through the physical presence of your bodies in the room. Nods, smiles, looks at the ceiling or out the windows, yawns, laughs, agitation, frowns, open-mouthed drooling sleep, all feed information to me about how it's going. And so I can adjust the address accordingly by speeding up, slowing down, breaking off for an anecdote or example, and so on. And so thus you see, the congregation co-construct the address. There's more going on than just the words coming out of my mouth. Also, an address is not like a document. It's not fixed, something I could just hand you. Hi, how you going? Nice of you to show up today. Here's the address. See you later. We have this idea that the information in an address is some fixed parcel that remains static and unchanged. But think about it. Since different responses are elicited by the same address, it's obvious that the same words coming from my mouth can and do mean different things to different people. So the meaning isn't fixed. It is changing. Depending on your past experiences and your disposition, whatever I meant to say, whatever I meant to say, is inevitably remade in your mind. Otherwise, everyone would get exactly the same meaning, and we know this isn't so. In fact, there is no way in the world I can determine what you will think or not think of whatever words I'm using, especially in a congregation necessarily as diverse as ours. For example, if I say, I really enjoy preaching at Norwood, the following meanings could be made in your heads. Oh, what a nice young man, how enthusiastic. Or, what's this yank trying to sell me? Or, I don't think he means that. Or, hey, isn't that a bird I hear? So the meaning isn't wholly dependent on the preacher, but is co-constructed by you, the diverse listeners. Thus, we are not in a realm of fixed, unchanging, one-way communication, but of two-way, dynamic conversation.